In these uncertain economic times, it's easy to be worried about protecting your wealth, your hard-earned savings, and your family's financial future. Plunging interest rates, the devaluating dollar, and political unrest constantly threaten what you have worked hard to earn and all that you own. That's why now it's more important than ever to protect your assets and have the money you need to make your dreams come true. Welcome to the Global Wealth Fortress Report with successful global entrepreneur and wealth preservation expert Joel Nagel. Joel's helped thousands of people just like you protect what you have so that you can make even more and make your every dream come true. So, sit back and enjoy Joel Nagel's offshore expert advice on how you can live the good life at a great price, where the sun never sets on your financial fortress.
Hello. It's Carol Carter, and I want to welcome you to Joel Nagel's Global Wealth Fortress Report. It has never in my memory, and I got a long memory, lots of years, been more important to get some good, solid advice, expert advice from the offshore assets oracle, Joel Nagel, than it is right now. Joel, what are you telling people with this economy in a tailspin? I don't care what the White House says, it's a tailspin. What are you telling people? What are you telling us?
Well, first, I'm very happy to be with you and coming to you from Zurich, Switzerland. We're in the middle of our Fortress Switzerland Week, which is a program that we do twice a year, in the summertime and in the winter time. And so I'm happy to be with you, but the subject's not a happy subject, obviously. And it's the same thing that, we're discussing here all day long, and meeting with top, bankers, investment advisors, gold people, insurance people. I mean, you name it. We really try to work in the creme de la creme of advisors. And I'm sitting with people that have, 9-figure net worths, 8-figure net worths, and they have the exact same worry as the cab driver and the school teacher and everybody. And, if you go back to certain periods in history, for example, I always like to talk about in the Weimar Republic, there was a 2-year period where an ounce of gold went from 100 Reichsmarks to 100 trillion Reichsmarks in 2 years, an ounce of gold. And so what that meant was it didn't matter whether you were rich, middle class, poor. At the end of that period, everybody that was sitting on their currency was completely wiped out. And that's a story that is ingrained in the psyche of not only Germans, but Swiss and Austrians and really Europeans as a whole. They believe in their system, but there's always caution. There's always, well, what's the plan B? Well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And I think, Americans, we're happy, optimistic people. And, some people flip it around the other way and say it's a normalcy bias, right? They say, well, that never really happened in the US. I mean, yes, we've had depressions and we've had some economic turmoil, but we've never really had that degree of the currency just simply collapsing the way it did in Germany and the way it has in other countries, around the world. I mean, Argentina, about every 10 years, they have a currency collapse, then they come up with a new plan, and 10 years later, it collapses all over again. So there are countries where it happens more frequently. And that's why people in those countries, they're used to this problem. I was just reading a newspaper here in Germany that was saying in Turkey, the official inflation's running at 80%. Unofficial, it's several 100%. So people immediately, when they get their money, they need to do something with it. And one of the things they're doing is running out and buying used cars, because
buying what? New
used cars. They're buying used cars. They're putting all their cars. They run out. If they have $1,000 or $5,000, whatever they have, they buy a car because they feel like that will hold real value. I mean, think about it. A car is a car is a car. And if the currency inflation goes up another 1,000%, 5,000%, they're still going to have a car. That's why, when you go back to the Reichsmarks in the Weimar Republic, the old joke was, a guy shows up at the bakery with the wheelbarrow full of cash and says, I'll give you the wheelbarrow of cash for a loaf of bread. And the baker says, well, you can keep the cash, but but give me the wheelbarrow, because, things have value. And
Yes. Yes.
I mean, cash money only has value if we believe it does. And historically, up until Nixon took us off the gold standard, the money was backed by gold. You could take
Yes.
cash at a set value and redeem it for gold. If you look at old paper money in the United States, like a $5 bill or a $10 bill from, let's say, the 20s or the 30s, it refers to it as a gold certificate.
That's right.
This dollar
Gold
bill
certificate.
Yep. Be exchanged for $20 of gold. And, at that time, gold was pegged like around a little bit over $20 an ounce. By the 30s, FDR played around with it to try to jack it up. And that's when he confiscated the gold, because he realized, well, the government doesn't have enough gold to print more money. And he still felt constrained that he couldn't print more money without more gold. But politicians today don't feel that constraint. So they just call the Fed, say, turn on the printing presses, print more money. And, we were talking about this before. I mean, during COVID, they were printing oodles and oodles and oodles of money, but nobody was spending it. So the velocity of the money was low. So even though the amount of circulation went up, the velocity went down. And therefore, we didn't see or feel the inflation that was being brought upon us. When we started coming out of COVID, people started spending more. They started going on trips again and eating at restaurants again and going to stores again. And what happened? Inflation went through the roof. Now, they're trying to talk down inflation, but one of the ways they're talking down inflation is to see the velocity of money crash again. And I think you have a chart on that.
It's unbelievable.
Where's that? What's the date where it just falls off the cliff?
It is 2020. It's 2020. Each one of those represents a decade, Joel.
Okay. So we're still in that cycle where the velocity has gone down. But again, the money printing has gone way up. So
yeah.
I just saw today that the UK, their official inflation was over 10%. I'm quite sure our real inflation is way over that, but the unofficial is pushing 10%. I think it's 9 something. That's the official number. So, this is, it's really a disaster. And it's quite honestly that we have political leaders that really don't understand economics.
They don't get it at all. Joel, you had the President of the United States make a statement to the press 3 days ago saying that we now have zero inflation. You can't make something like that up. Our friends over at the Daily Reckoning were stunned in their article. Zero. Yeah. He said we have zero inflation.
Yeah. And so you don't know, is that is that because he's senile that he would say something like that? Or does he really just not understand economics? I mean, go to any grocery store in America and talk to any housewife that comes out of the store and say, do we have inflation? And she'll bite your head off, because of course there's inflation. I mean, every week you go to the grocery store, every week you buy gas, every week you buy clothes, a bike, car, whatever it is you need to buy it. And it's just, it's astronomical how much things are really going up. And the government's official statistics are designed to try to keep the true numbers low. But, this new Inflation Reduction Act, that was just complete garbage, complete window dressing to try to get people to support it, right? I mean,
right.
Joe Manchin came out with the Build Back Better, said, I can't support it. We can't spend all this money. It's inflationary. So now they said, okay, we'll spend a little bit less money, but we'll call it something that makes it sound like the whole point of the bill is to do away with inflation. The Inflation Reduction Act. Who can be against inflation reduction? We all want inflation reduction. But again, this is like giving a man in a deep hole a shovel and say, keep digging. Eventually you'll dig your way out. And it won't happen. Spending another $700 million, and don't even get me started about the whole IRS thing.
Oh my God.
87,000 new IRS agents. And now they're trying to walk that back and say, oh, they're just going to be targeting, wealthy people. That's bull.
That's
And
bull.
they know that's bull. You know why? Because wealthy people that have over $400,000, they also have tax advisors. They have great CPAs. They're going to get tax lawyers. When the IRS goes after them, those people are going to fight back.
Yeah.
Me
And
personally,
Joel,
I've been audited 3 times. I've never paid 1 cent to the IRS because of an audit, but I've spent crap loads of money on lawyers and accountants.
well, yeah,
So what about the school teacher that makes $50,000 that gets audited? Are they going to say, oh, I'm going to go spend a fortune defending myself? Or are they just going to roll over and hand over to the IRS whatever they want because they're going to fear that it's going to be more expensive to hire tax professionals to represent them? That's what this is about. And, the other thing, they walk back this notion about, oh, it's not about, deadly force. That's also a lie.
that's a lie.
I saw a statistic that of the 87,000 agents, over 70,000, so that's a pretty big percent, will be trained in law enforcement, will carry guns, will have badges, and they will be authorized to use deadly force. So literally, to me, law enforcement and IRS should have nothing to do with each other.
Nothing.
No,
Nothing.
IRS people should be accountants and CPAs that are working for the government to make sure your taxes are collected. The US is the only country in the world that I know of that's essentially militarized, turned a huge, this bureaucracy is bigger than the next 4 or 5 government agencies combined. That's how big this is. And it's just, it's scary. It's reprehensible. I saw the other day, a US Republican senator came out urging Americans not to apply for those jobs, saying, when we take control, we're going to defund those positions. So don't even bother applying. I've never seen that in politics, honestly, either. But yeah, I could really go on and on about that. But weaponizing them, giving them guns and badges, that should not be the case. That is to intimidate people. That is not to correctly collect. That Yellen came out and said, oh, it's going to be to help people, to give more people there that can answer their questions and return phone calls in a more timely manner.
No way.
Like Mary Poppins. That is just not the case. They are not there to help. They are there to intimidate people, and that's exactly. And don't forget, in the IRS agents get promoted when they collect on audits. That's when they get promoted. So if you're in the IRS, you want to get promoted, you're going to be going after people. You're going to be, turn the screws as hard as you can, squeeze any money out of them, because that's how you get promoted. And it doesn't matter whether the person owes more money that they, should have paid this or should have paid that. Their goal is to collect more money. So my personal policy is like Walt Disney, it's scorched earth. I will spend every cent I have on lawyers and defense people to make sure if I've filed a return and it says I owe X and I pay X, I'm not paying 1 cent more than that. So, but again, I have personally the resources to do that, and the average working person doesn't. So it's garbage. They're only going after companies and people making a lot of money. They will be going after retired people and school teachers and truck drivers. Those people are going to be the low-hanging fruit. So, all these folks that said, oh, isn't this bill wonderful? They're going to be not happy when 2 years from now they get their first audit. And by the way, with that army of auditors, you're not going to get audited once, a decade or every 15 or 20 years. I'll bet you every 2 or 3 years you get audited constantly.
It's just
once you get audited and they find something, then they'll come back next year and the year after and the year after and the year after. We're going to turn the IRS into this financial police state. And, it's not consistent with American values of liberty. It's not consistent with, anything that most people believe in. So I'm just appalled. And, the way that they got it through was just to not talk about it. And to me, you don't sneak a bill to add 87,000 IRS agents into a bill that's supposedly to fight inflation. What if the bill was called, the IRS Massive Expansion Act of 2020? Who would have voted for that?
Which is what it is.
That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
So they play with these little games with the name to try to manipulate things, but 87,000 more IRS agents, and spending a bunch of money to bring down inflation, it's just not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. And Joel, you mentioned Manchin. Manchin voted for it. Manchin, he's done in West Virginia. Manchin voted for it, and he said, well, it's only going to affect people who make over 400,000, just what you said. But here's what Joe didn't say. When the bill was being debated, the Republicans introduced an amendment that there could be no audits of anyone making under 400,000. And Manchin and the Democrats voted it down, Joel. So
That's
they
because
are
they know when
lying.
they audit people like me, they're not going to get money, Carter. That's the whole point. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. It's a total lie. The
It's a
people they're
lie.
going to get money from are people that make between about $50,000 and $150,000. That's the demographic that's going to be the most susceptible to this. I promise you. And
No,
it'll be 15 years from now until the data comes out that proves that. But by then, you know, people will be talking about something different. I would definitely, you know, if Trump or any person on the Republican side wants to win my vote 2 years from now for president, they only have to say one thing. You know, drain the swamp means we're going to defund the IRS completely.
absolutely.
Because the amount of money that's spent on the IRS, they can't even justify their existence. It's more expensive for them to exist, to pay all those salaries of now 140,000 people running around with guns and badges. Then, you know, there's lots of other ways you could structure our tax system. It's supposed to be a voluntary tax system, meaning you're supposed to voluntarily figure out your tax, figure out what you owe, and pay it. And there should be audits in place for people who cheat. I'm not against that at all. But, you know, creating this giant police force, I think Mitch McConnell said it really well. He said people don't want 87,000 new IRS agents. They want 87,000 more, you know, Customs and Border Patrol agents to keep, you know, the millions of illegal immigrants from pouring across the border. So, you know, that's where we are. The effects are the effects. We're not going to, we're not going to wish them away. I think we could have long policy debates about the right way to fix the economy in the country. And I think lots of my clients and friends would love that. They would love to do that. They would love to play a meaningful role. But look, we have a political system that doesn't really want experts in there to actually fix these things.
That's right.
We have people, you know, making decisions that have no understanding of them whatsoever. So what that means for the individual is you have to look at the system and say, okay, given all the flaws in the system, how do I best protect myself? And that's why I'm here in Switzerland and Liechtenstein. And it's been a fantastic week. We had a chance on Monday to go to the Nationality Day in Liechtenstein to celebrate their Independence Day. Got to meet the prince of Liechtenstein, and you know, in Liechtenstein, the maximum tax rate's 18%. Maximum.
Was it 8? Did you say 18%?
18%.
Unbelievable.
They have virtually no unemployment. The government runs a budget surplus, and the tax return is 4 pages. That's the long one. If you're in business for yourself, it's 4 pages. If you're an employee, it's one page. Now think about that. I mean, how much money, time, effort do we waste on all the costs it is to comply with all the bureaucracy? Last year, my tax return was over 100 pages. I had many professionals spend many hours. I used to do all my taxes myself. I mean, I'm trained as a tax lawyer.
Right.
But, you know, the old saying is the lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. And,
right,
you know, I don't want to be that. So, you know, when I look at the bills, I'm just like, my God, this is unbelievable. But, you know, it's what I have to do to comply with the law. So, of course, I do it. But, you know, when you see that other countries can do it differently and it's better for everyone. I mean, you know, with a 1 or a 4-page return, the government can review every single return with just a handful of people. But when you have returns like mine that are over 100 pages, the vast majority, 90% of IRS agents would not understand my return. So now within the IRS bureaucracy, you have to find somebody who would understand the stuff that I'm doing, involved in other parts of the world and foreign real estate and this and that. And they don't. So they've created a system so complex. 75% of the time when you call the IRS helpline, the answer you get is incorrect. The IRS acknowledge that themselves.
Absolutely.
So they acknowledge that when you call them, 3/4 of the time they give you the wrong answer. but it's still your responsibility to file and pay your taxes correctly. Even when you're saying, well, I contacted the IRS, I asked them, they gave me this. That's how I based my, how I answered this and how I paid the tax. Oh, too bad. It's your fault. And you pay taxes, you pay interest, you pay penalties, right? So we have this system that doesn't benefit the taxpayer. It doesn't honestly benefit the government. So who does it benefit? It benefits all these special interests, including lots of lawyers, lots of accountants, lots of CPAs on this one. But then you multiply that throughout the budget 1,000 times for everything else. There's so many special interests there. So going back to my point, if somebody wants to win my vote, let's come out with the real drain the swamp, and the IRS and these bloated agencies that don't accomplish anything. Does anybody think the Department of Education educates people? No, it just wastes billions of dollars. Reagan said we have to end the Department of Education and give the money to the states and let the states do it. And the states give money to the local communities and let the local communities do it. And we wouldn't be dealing with things like, critical race theory, where, these nutcases come up with all this stuff and then try to push it down everybody's throat. Well, if those decisions are made at a local level, that's not going to happen. Or if it happens in, New York City, it's not going to happen in Texas, right? So, but anyways, I'm going off on a tangent.
But it's not a tangent.
Switzerland, people were coming here to get answers. I think the people who were here got the answers. We mixed in a lot of fun. We hiked to the top of a big mountain. We've gone to some great beer houses and had schnitzel and beer and really mixed it in with great meetings with great professionals. Switzerland is still one of the top places to put your money. It's been sort of a protected jurisdiction for over 500 years. The currency is strong. They don't have deficit spending, so that's why their currency keeps getting stronger and stronger. When I was in college, I would get 5 Swiss francs for $1, and it's steadily over the last 40 years gone from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1, and now it's inverted where the Swiss franc is worth more than the dollar. I think the other day I saw it was about $1.07. So $1.07 to get 1 Swiss franc. That trend's going to continue because the U.S. is going to keep printing money. Switzerland is not. So that people realize, like, okay, well, if I have a little extra money laying around, I probably don't want it to lay around in dollars. I should put it in a currency like Switzerland, right? If I just put it in the bank with no interest at all over the last 40 years, it would be more than 5 times in dollar terms what it was when I put it in. And that's with zero interest and zero return. So that's how really bad over time our system is, our dollar system is performing. Most people don't want to mention that, or they're saying, oh, well, last week the dollar was up against the euro, it was up against the pound.
Right.
Okay, great.
Right.
I mean, it goes up and down and up and down. But if you look at the chart, it's, let's see, I have to do it the right way on your screen. It's headed down. It's zigzagging up and down, but it's like your chart there. It's just really going in one direction.
It's going in one direction.
We talked a lot the last couple of days about ways to protect your wealth. We've talked about them on this show. We talked about real estate. Instead of buying into something like a real estate investment trust in the U.S., why not do it in Switzerland? Buy into commercial offices where you have very good tenants and they're paying you in Swiss franc terms. So now instead of getting zero on your money in a U.S. bank, you're getting 5% on a very conservative investment in Switzerland where you're getting paid in Swiss francs instead of dollars. Or it's those types of things we're talking about. Gold, people love gold, but how do you get income from gold? So we had some experts talking about that. We had a fellow talking about the whole Bitcoin crypto space. But you notice that all of these things are things that are alternative and different from the dollar. And that's what really comes up a lot in these types of events, because people have dollars and they're worried, well, what if it turns into the Reichsmark 1922, and it doesn't matter whether you have $1,000, $1 million, or $100 million, we're all going to be in the same boat, because Voltaire said it best: every currency reaches its intrinsic value, and that value is zero. So how long it takes to get there is a function of the government policy. And I don't think the government's functioning that well right now. That's why we have the inflation that we have. And yeah, God bless Joe Biden if he thinks we have zero inflation, but there's not a prayer of that. And, I would be curious to know when the last time you ever went in the grocery store, honestly.
Oh, it's preposterous. It's preposterous. Him or his wife or anybody in his family. And you nailed it with the here we have a so-called Inflation Reduction Act that spends an addition, it's going to cost $400 to $600 billion, which the government doesn't have. So it's going to print more fiat money to cover that bill. And then the value of the dollar goes down even further, Joel. Yeah. Am I right?
Absolutely. And then throw in there the tax thing. Oh, we're not going to tax anybody who doesn't make over 400,000, but the corporate minimum tax, that's big world government. They decided that in Davos a year ago that all governments should have a 15% tax. The Biden administration has clearly bought into that. And it might sound good to say, well, the companies, they can afford it. Let them pay that minimum tax. But, the reality is companies are just pass-throughs at the end of the day. So when a company pays more tax, they're just going to pass it through to you, whatever the product is that they produce. So, that's where it will affect everyone. And the GAO, the Government Accounting Office, came out and said that equated to a 1.5% tax increase of every single American. So, and again, the people who are the folks over 400,000 that they like to bash, they can probably afford to pay the 1.5% more than the school teacher and the truck driver and, all the people that the Democratic Party purports to serve. But in actuality, they're going to have less money because of taxes, less money because of inflation. They're going to have, to deal with the new reinforced and well-funded IRS police, and that's what it is.
Police, well-armed.
IRS police. They're coming to your house with warrants and guns, and they're authorized to use deadly force. If you resist and say, "Get off my property," they feel you do something in a threatening way, they can shoot you. And that should never, ever, ever be the case. People are worried about police officers who have years and years of training, not knowing the right amount of force to exert. How are these glorified accountants with badges? How are they? I mean, they have 1,000th of 1% of the training that a police officer has. So who thinks it's a good idea to just give them all guns and say, okay, go collect more taxes? It's just crazy. I mean, if they come to my office, they're not getting in. So, who are they going to deal with? They're not dealing with people that have money. They're dealing with people who don't have money. And that's the dirty little secret that they don't want to acknowledge or admit. But I guarantee you that every Democrat who voted for it that even says that knows deep in their heart and soul that that's not how it's going to work.
It's not how it's going to work. And we know that the average net worth of those who voted for this bill in the U.S. Senate is $7 million. So they ain't affected by it. They don't care. Done. Yeah. The average person. Also, I just read, I have to a person who makes under $50,000 in this country, $50,000 a year, you mentioned that figure earlier, is 5 times more likely to get audited by the IRS than those that make 400,000.
There is actually a reason for that, and it's because of the child tax credit. The child tax credit was written in such a very poor way, and people can actually fill out, child tax credit returns and get money from the government, even if they paid no tax whatsoever.
That's right.
And so unfortunately, people have discovered that, and it's a way for abuse. So it tends to be people under $50,000 in income that are claiming these returns. Like one time when I got audited, they're like, "Oh, well, you have 7 kids on your return." Like, no, literally, I kid you not. They wanted me to prove that I had 7 kids. Okay, well, I'll get the birth certificates and send them on over. But why is that? Because, if you were at a lower tax bracket and somebody told you, hey, just put a bunch of kids on your return and you get thousands of dollars back from the government. I mean, it was literally that easy. The government made it that way. They made it that easy. They caused the fraud and abuse in the first place. So then, yeah, then they turned around and said, oh, well, we better police this better. So yeah, people who make under $50,000 that claim the child tax credit, they're going to get audited. So anyways, but again, it's a question. Anybody can get audited, but it's not a question of who can get audited. It's who can defend themselves properly. And most people at the lower income brackets can't. And that's why I think if you're an IRS agent, you're trying to get promoted. You want to show, hey, like I had 50 cases this year and I got money out of 45 of them. Who are you going to go after? You're going to go after me, waste 2 years fighting and get nothing? Or are you going to go after 10 truck drivers and convince them all, look, it's not worth your while to fight. Just give me a check for $1,800. I'll go away. That's what's happening. Our government is basically, it's going to turn into a green mail system where it's going to be, I'm going to bring so much heartache and hassle to your life, which is what the IRS is already doing. But now they've got guns and badges and, or you can pay me and I'll go away and I'll get my promotion. So what's a rational, normal person going to do? They're going to give them a check.
Hand them a check.
They're going to give them a check. That's what they're going to do. And that, to me, that's another insidious tax increase. It's a regressive tax increase because, again, that $1,800 check, if I have to write it, I will. But, the school teacher, the truck driver, that means a lot more for them. And as a percentage of their taxes, it's much more meaningful. So we're headed down the wrong track. I would love it if we could turn the American ship around. I think there are bright minds out there and people who do know and understand economics, and we could be more like Liechtenstein and have, an 18% tax rate that everybody would gladly pay and not, you wouldn't need expensive tax lawyers and accountants and CPAs to file and pay your taxes. People would do it, right? But that's not really what the system has. So much special interest built into it that the only way to really think about it is, well, okay, I can't fix the system. It's truly broken. The swamp has won. The swamp has taken over. So what do? I have to think about, how do I protect myself and my family? And, it might sound, draconian, but when I say this, it actually makes me depressed. I mean, like my phone rings all day long, right? So from a business perspective, it's great. But yeah, I personally benefit at the expense of our country. And I don't need to do that. I would, if somebody said, help us fix the system, I'll roll up my sleeves. Like Mark Cuban said, sure, I'll do it for free. Don't pay me anything. Put 10 guys in a room. We'll fix it all for you. No problem. We'll increase government revenues. We'll decrease the deficit. We'll do away with pork spending. That could all be done, but the government doesn't want to do that. And because there's so much vested interest that thrive off of the status quo the way it is. So it's a tough situation. I wish there were politicians. That's why I said, I think that is maybe an advantage for Trump, because he can come back and say, look, this system is really, really broken. I'm the only one that can fix it. And by the way, I can't run for re-election because of the Constitution. So I'm not here with the idea that the only thing I have to worry about is getting reelected. I'm coming here for 4 years, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to gut all these bloated agencies. I'm going to reduce unemployment in a real way, so people have real jobs instead of working a bunch of part-time jobs and then saying, oh, they're employed. Bring inflation down because we have a competitive economy, not because of, hocus pocus, at the organizations that calculate these things, and really make real change, which includes draining the swamp. But, I spent a lot of time in DC, and I can just tell you the swamp is super powerful. I think it's so powerful that maybe, Trump won't even be able to run. I mean, they definitely don't want him to run.
Doing everything in their power. Yeah. To keep him from running. But I'll tell you how
I will measure. Like you said.
What'd you say?
It might backfire, like you said,
Yeah. Here's how I'll measure that both parties in Washington have any intention at all of correcting the situation, draining the swamp, fixing the tax system. And that's when you are called in to advise them. When that happens, that'll restore my faith. So there we go.
I'll take a 1 year unpaid leave of absence from everything I'm doing and roll up my sleeves and go help them do it. I mean, there are a lot of smart people out there that would love to do it, but you just have this feeling of hopelessness, like it can't happen. So, my time is spent helping people individually. Like, okay, here you've got this broken system. So what do? You move some of your assets out of your home currency, out of the dollar, away from danger. Really, that's what it comes down to. And this notion of going offshore to reduce your taxes, that's not true. People still pay the same amount of taxes. And that's why, this notion that like, oh, well, rich people are moving the money offshore. They're doing it not for taxes. They're protecting themselves from lawsuits. They're protecting themselves from devaluation. They're protecting themselves from, regulatory just crap that's out there. I mean, I have a lot of people, they're trying to do a business and they can't do it in the US. I've heard it so many times. Well, look, I have to deal not only with the IRS, I have to deal with the SEC. I have to deal with the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Organization. And they all have their overlapping rules and they don't even always agree with each other. So literally, they're like, I could spend millions of dollars before I could even start my business in the US, or I can go offshore. I can go to BVI or Belize or Panama. I can go to one of these jurisdictions, set up a company, and I can be in business tomorrow. So what happened to America? I mean, we were always the country that was, the most competitive. People wanted to come from all over the world to become entrepreneurs in our country. And now it's not that way. I mean, more and more, it saddens me. It really does to see. I mean, I see wealthy people at events like we're doing this week, but there's always a couple young people. And I think that saddens me even more because they're not going overseas because of taxes. They're going overseas because the entrepreneurial opportunities no longer exist in the US. So they're going to build the next generation of Facebooks and Googles and all these, particularly in the tech industry. They're going to build them in other places. You have countries that specifically give them incentives and tax reductions and free office space and on and on and on to come in. And it's not like they're unregulated. They are, but it's a moderate level of regulation, right? It's to make sure that you're not a crook or a criminal. You're going to steal somebody's money. That's what regulation's supposed to be.
That's what it's supposed to be. Yeah.
I mean, I saw when I was in New York a few weeks ago, a manual to open up a restaurant in New York City, 10,000 pages, 10,000 pages. Now, I mean, that's just crazy. Who can work through that anyways, so I'm not opening up a restaurant in New York anytime soon. And you see this entrepreneurial talent fleeing the United States, and it's going to benefit other countries. It's going to hurt the US. And I think we need to do something to bring back the competitiveness, make it easier for people to comply with the laws. I mean, our laws have just grown and grown and grown. Can't remember the name of the fellow who wrote the book, 3 Felonies a Day. And he was basically saying our legal system is so complex that every single American violates the law every single day. Not
sure, of course,
because they're trying to. And then the justice system, as we see now with Trump, becomes weaponized. Because think about it, we all commit crimes every day, whether we know it or not. But the government, the party in power, gets to choose which of those crimes that they go after.
Yes.
So if everybody's guilty, right out of the gates, then it makes it pretty easy for them. Shooting fish in a barrel. Okay, today we want Trump. We're going after him. Tomorrow they might want Carter. The next day they might want Joel. And I mean, that's not the system that the founding fathers, created. But again, this bureaucracy is it's gotten so big, and we have to do something to stop it. In the meantime, individuals have to do what they can to protect themselves, protect their families. And I suspect the number of events we do this year, now that COVID travel restrictions have kind of ended, it's going to go way up. This month we did Liechtenstein and Switzerland. At the end of September, October, we're doing another one in Austria and Germany. November, we have the annual conference that we do, the President's Week conference, by invitation only. Yep. But you can invite people if you know folks that would like to come. And then we're already, planning a couple more events. We'll definitely do in January, February, another event back here in Switzerland. It's always the most popular one. People like to come during the ski season so they can, work a little skiing in. I know in February or March, we're going to be in Belize. So if you or your, viewers have an interest in attending one of these things, it's really quite eye-opening. You're around like-minded people. You're hearing from top professionals, many of whom used to work in the government, so they understand the government from inside out. You can learn about solutions, structural solutions, investment solutions. That's really what it's about. I never try to convince anybody to do anything. There's no hard
That's right.
sale.
That's right.
We just teach people and educate them about what's out there, and then they can make the decisions themselves. So, anyways, I hope we didn't go over today, but
well, it was outstanding. And let me reiterate, the President's Week conference in November, right?
yes.
In November probably has never been more important because of the election in November. It's perfect timing.
Yeah.
And people are going to learn at that conference what they need to do to hold the politicians' feet to the fire. Vital.
Yeah.
Vital.
Yeah, of course. We'll already know who which way the House and Senate has tipped, and that'll start to indicate the kind of policies that are going to come down the pike. Obviously, if the Democrats figure out how to hold the Senate and the House, and now there's some talk that they might be able to, you can see the agenda moving even more radically to the left, particularly if Biden announces that he's not going to rerun, and he'll be able to push through all kinds of things. If the Republicans take one or more, if they take the House or the Senate or both, it'll be like Clinton, what happened to him, where he had to move more to the center, kind of put on the back burner the AOCs and those kind of people. So really, a lot of the folks that we invite will be sort of interpreting, reading the tea leaves, and giving us some direction, not only politically but financially, what's going to happen with interest rates, and how you can really kind of stay ahead of the curve. So, I love it. I enjoy it. It's what I enjoy spending my time doing. But even for other people who might not want to spend all of their life in this world doing that, to go to one event, I think it's very, very eye-opening. You definitely won't be the same. Even if you just do one thing, you hear about 30 things, you just pick one thing and do it. I think you'll be happy in the long run.
I think so. And I think folks, we're going to inform you. I'm going to start sending you emails about the November President's Week conference, because that one is vital, regardless of which party.
We're going to have some great surprise speakers, and some of them even said they're willing to come, but I can't market and promote the event that they're going to be there. So come and you'll be pleasantly surprised with some of the great speakers that we've had over the years. Last year we had Ron Paul, who was fantastic. He was just scheduled to come for a couple hours, stayed 3 days. He loved it. He said, I can't get enough of this. He gave did a fireside chat one night and sat around and answered people's questions till midnight. It was just great. So
it's fantastic.
We try to have people at that caliber that really understand the dynamics of what's going on in the world. And of course, there's just more and more complexity with the war in Ukraine, supply chain, inflation, devaluation. I've never seen so many difficult problems thrown at, the individual American trying to save, invest, provide for their family. I've never seen it in 32 years. It's never been this bad. I think even as a kid, going back to the 70s with Carter, it didn't seem as bad as what we're going through right now.
No, because with Carter, you got the feeling that it really was total ineptitude. Now you get the feeling it's deliberate, which is very frightening.
Well, that's a good point. Somebody said it the other day. They said, I don't know what's worse, if these decisions are being made out of incompetence or they're being made deliberately. But I think I agree with you that they do know what they're doing, and they're doing it anyways. They're doing it purposefully. If they were doing it ignorantly, maybe you'd give them a pass and say, all right, 2 years from now, I'll be out of office and we'll fix it. But I mean, there's a lot going on, and it's being done purposefully. Big Brother is out there, and it's only going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And yeah, I think you might need a force like a Trump 2.0 to come in and put the kibosh on all this.
It's fantastic, Joel. It's been incredible. This has been incredible.
Great.
This has been a great learning experience.
I always enjoy spending time with you. And next week I'll be back. Next week I'm going to be in Austria. I have some business there. But we can talk more about the conferences, and Austria has a lot of interesting things going on there. And, it's like Switzerland. It's technically a neutral country, and that we can talk a little bit about what that means. But so thanks very much, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
It's fantastic. Thank you, Joel. Excellent. Folks, wow. I mean, that was absolutely going to school at the feet of the master. So think about what Joel said, apply what Joel said, write down right now, November, the President's Week conference. Joel talked about all these people you got to meet. Remember, that's including Joel Nagel, the Offshore Assets Protection Oracle. So as I always tell you, every week, let's do this thing.